the new wildlife friendly Alderbury, which you've been hearing about. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Nick. I don't know which of you is going to actually start the proceedings, but I'll hand it to you, Nick, and then you and Chelsie, we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, right, I'm just gonna, Chelsie, you ready?
I am, yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna share the screen. There we go. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Right. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, right. So, yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting us along. Yeah, my name's Nick South, and my colleague is Chelsie. If you want to say hello.
Yeah, sorry, it's weird, isn't it, when it's like screen share someone else.
Yeah.
Hi everybody. It's yeah, lovely to see some faces and a pretty full meeting, which is good. So yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy hearing us talk about and get excited about Alderbury, really, and all the things that we would like to see happen there.
Okay, so yeah, Wild Landscapes, that's who we are. Just to sort of set the scene. So Wild Landscapes is a project within the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust. And historically, the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust has managed nature reserves across the county for about 50 or 60 years. But in the last, I don't know, let's say 10 years or so, it's become apparent that it's not enough now just to manage those special places, those areas that nature reserves that are really good for wildlife. Now, because of climate change, because of global warming, all that type of stuff, that's not enough anymore. What we need to do is work with all the land within the county and across the country. We need to work with everybody, and that's where Wild Landscapes sort of originated from. We work with everybody across Wiltshire, and we help people to create green spaces for wildlife and for people. So we work with all sorts of different people. We work with schools, we work with organisations, we work with private individuals, and we also work with town and parish councils. And we do a whole range, we carry out a whole range of different services. It could range from site assessments to creating wildlife ponds, to creating meadows, giving people advice on whatever piece of land they've got. We've done all sorts of stuff, but we've done a lot of work with town and parish councils, and that's how we got involved with Alderbury. Okay. There we go. That's better. Right. So yeah. So we've worked with a whole number of town and parish councils over the last probably sort of 3 or 4 years. We've worked extensively with Chippenham Town Council. We've assessed all their green spaces across Chippenham, which is probably the biggest town in Wiltshire now, if you disregard Swindon. And Salisbury, obviously, because it's a city. So yeah, so we worked with across the green spaces of Chippenham. We've assessed all their land, and that culminated in working on a management plan for Monkton Park, which is a really large area in the centre of the town. That sort of it's a big long river corridor for the Bristol Avon. So that we've done a lot of work there. So we've also done, well, we've just started recently working with Castle Hill Country Park in Salisbury, Laverstock, and that's working with Laverstock and Ford Parish Council. And we're responsible for the community engagement and volunteering within the country park. Other sort of towns and villages that we work with include Wroughton, Staverton, South Marston, Calm, Melksham, quite a lot. So our involvement started with Alderbury when we were contacted by Steve Milton with the brief that, what can we do to improve Alderbury for wildlife, but for people as well. So there's a whole range of things that we can do, and that could range from sort of creating a parish map with showing all the different areas that are good for wildlife and which areas can be improved, and really sort of mapping out everything that's there already in Alderbury. And that's a good start, making an audit of all the key species and habitats that are there. Then we can go on from that to create a biodiversity or environmental policy. So that could be a document that would sort of make suggestions on what the people of Alderbury could do to improve things for wildlife. So that might be stuff like managing the road verges in a different way, and all sorts of other stuff that people can get involved in. So I think one of the main things that can be done is we can look at the land that is owned by the parish council, and we can look at that and see how that can be improved for biodiversity. So what we did on Monday was Chelsie and I came over to Alderbury. We conducted a site visit with Steve, Mel, various others, and we looked around the town, around the village, at various places. And we sort of gave advice on those areas. And what we're going to do is take that information away and then produce a report which will sort of give advice and things that can be done in the future at various places around the village. And that will also include ways that the community can get involved. Maybe that's through like appointing volunteer wardens, or helping out on various different sites. So there's lots of things in the pipeline, and so the rest of the presentation is going to sort of concentrate on some of those places and areas we saw on Monday, and sort of highlight some of the things that we think could possibly be carried out in the future. So I'll just go to the next slide. This is Chelsea's first one, so I'll pass you over to her for that.
Oh yeah. So as Nick was saying, we kind of had an initial visit of a few green spaces within Alderbury, mainly looking at really easily accessible public green spaces. And one of the first and most obvious locations really is the Rec, which is adjacent to the newly renovated and very posh, may I say, Village Hall. And the Rec there obviously has its limitations. It has its purpose as a sports kind of facility really, and a leisure facility and a play area. But we started off the kind of conversations there with just some really basic kind of practices and changes that could happen in that area just to support more wildlife. And we talked about really basic things like leaving set aside strips of longer meadow type grass right around the perimeter. We talked about native hedgerow versus any kind of like coniferous hedgerow that's there, infilling gaps, making sure that there's hedgehog highways, little points like that. And then one thing that really stuck out to me, which I thought that would be a really good kind of place to start really and make quite a visual impact. I'm sure everybody's familiar that there's a wall at the end of the Rec which is painted in quite a bright green at the moment, and after I mentioned it, it came up that actually, yeah, that's a point of conversation quite a lot. And, what can we do with this area to make it even just look more visually appealing? And I thought actually this would be quite a good place to do something slightly different and maybe treat this wall as a bit of an invertebrate wall. So it would basically be an opportunity to use natural screening on the wall. So that could include lots of lovely evergreen climbers, so things like evergreen jasmines and climbing hydrangeas, really good for pollinators, really good for insects. And then there's a huge variety, endless options really, of these lovely invertebrate wall features. So some of them are kind of like, they're basically bug hotels, but not quite as we normally know them. And they can be made to look very, well, they can be made with great design effort as well as kind of more natural scruffy versions. But yeah, there's some there which are like picture frames with some very carefully positioned woodwork pieces which look really lovely. People have done discs, and then yeah, your more kind of like standard pieces made out of pallet wood and scrap pieces of wood. But these are really great invertebrate walls, and one, obviously it provides the opportunity to make it look a bit more visually appealing, but two, it also provides a really great educational opportunity. So we've done things mainly in schools before, where you can attach kind of like bungee cord magnifying glasses and things to the wall, and you can have some information boards to encourage families and children to actually start looking around the wall and investigate and look for invertebrates, and you know, see the benefits and the purpose of what we've done to the wall, really. And naturally that lends itself to having a, you know, a little slim kind of planter around the bottom of the wall as well to support the climbers, and again just add some nice colour and interest. So this is just one tiny example of something that can easily be adopted, you know, in public settings, and actually make that quite a nice talking point and a real difference. It also lent itself because after walking around several green spaces in Alderbury, we kind of realised that there's quite a bit of scope to do quite a few things in some of these more unused locations, and it would be a really good point back at the rec and back at your village hall to have almost like a central base where you can have these maps of the village and your green spaces that you've proactively all worked on, to almost send people off on a little kind of like wildlife trail around your village and around your parish. So really, yeah, the rec and the village hall can almost become kind of your central hub for all the information of anything that happens from this project, and I think that's kind of key to everything moving forward. I just pressed the keyboard and I'm not in control of the PowerPoint, Nick.
Yeah, it's me, I'm in control.
Yeah, you can go next.
No, it's you.
Now it's me again. Yeah, so the other thing that I got really excited about was, so directly opposite the skate park and again the village hall and things, we've got the main road through the parish, but there's also this really kind of poignant piece of green space, greenland, which is just basically grass, right near your parish sign, that the central kind of statue sign, whatever you would like to call it, that tells you where you are, and at the moment it's just a rather barren piece of grassland, and I gather it's mowed quite regularly, and that's about it. Now when I look at that, I suddenly think, okay, well, what's it offering for people and what's it offering for wildlife? And I think personally on both counts probably not a lot, and not as much as it could do. So I thought it would be a really great place to actually to do something with the village, you know, with the villages and the local support that showcases this whole kind of effort that you are all kind of trying to take on of making Alderbury a wildlife friendly parish, and also make something really visually attractive as like a welcoming into your kind of area. So this is, again, these are all suggestions, but what really sprung to me at the moment is that, yeah, we are in an ecological crisis, and every time we can support more pollinators or more invertebrates, which are kind of our baseline of the food webs, if you like, then yeah, things like blossom bearing trees and fruit bearing trees just lend themselves to that effort massively. So we've thought about basically putting in a community orchard. So it would be a really attractive feature alongside the main road. We're thinking about semi-dwarfing fruit varieties, so nothing that's going to get, you know, anything that gets too large or out of hand, and also nothing that casts too much kind of like shadow to anything neighbouring. But yeah, semi-dwarf fruit varieties, they'll have lovely blossom, so things like cherries, but even apples and pears. We can try and choose local heritage varieties even. But really, the basis of it then is that, you know, there's opportunities there for local volunteer groups to be set up. There's plenty of room down at the far end. You can see on that map, the far top left corner, there's a little brown box which kind of shows a possible area for some compost bays, so that any waste or any trimmings from the site can be managed on site. And then the grassland can be part of that management. So there's no reason why we can't start like a hay cut regime, so leaving the grassland much longer, letting the flowers start to actually have a chance to thrive. We can monitor that, we can see if that needs a bit of extra help at any point. And then really your only bit of like regularly mown lawn or grass would be maybe a central glade, where eventually you could look to fund and put in some benches and some seating for people to have picnics and enjoy the area, and maybe some lovely little kind of wiggly mown paths that are just maintained so that people can wander around the orchard freely, and it's a nice environment to be in. So a nice mixture of habitat in what otherwise at the moment is just kind of, you know, a regularly mown grassland. Nick, could you click for me?
Yep.
So just to kind of visually, I find it's really hard for people to just, I know everybody knows what an orchard looks like, but visually it's nice, I think, to see some photos of some of these lower, you know, semi-dwarfing varieties. So, you know, they're really lovely looking trees. And there's a picture there at the bottom with some of those nice mown pathways and things. So really great community areas, really beneficial for wildlife, leads on to lots of other opportunities for, like, you know, community events and things and engagement. And I think something that will look really visually attractive if done right, alongside, you know, your village hall, your rec, and that central kind of hub area. So yeah, thank you, Nick.
Right, okay. So yeah, I will just say there, because it's just sort of popped into my head, I think, that just please remember that none of this is set in stone. These are all just ideas that we came up with as we walked around the village. So everything that we talk about today is not you know, definitely going to happen, and we can engage with the community, with everybody that lives in Alderbury, and go from there, really. So, you know, if there's other ideas that are better, then we can go with those, but these are just a sort of flavour of what could possibly be done. So the next area is the Oakwood Grove amenity area. Now this to me felt like a really superb community space, and I felt like there was a lot of opportunity there for people who live around that site to get involved in helping with the management, and really sort of taking ownership of the site. So we're probably going to carry out a specific site assessment just for this site to make sure we know everything that's there at the moment, and then really work out what is the best way to move forward with it. But I think the main way I'm looking at it is just really sort of refining the habitats that are already there, just sort of accentuating some of the stuff, maybe bringing some other stuff in. But there's already some decent stuff there. So in the picture in the top left, there's a big old dead oak tree, and although it is dead, oak trees and dead wood habitat is absolutely amazing for all sorts of insects, invertebrates, all sorts of stuff. So the idea wouldn't be to get rid of that dead tree entirely. It probably would need some work for health and safety purposes in case a branch fell down or something like that. But the idea would be to leave some of that dead wood standing for invertebrates, because it's all good stuff. And then further over on the right, there's another really big oak tree, which isn't dead. And again, you know, there is no better tree for insects and all sorts of species than an oak tree. So, but what I think is lacking in that area is more sort of understory, some of the smaller trees like hazel, hawthorn, that type of stuff. So I think there's opportunities there to introduce maybe some more woodland, some more, you know, scrub type stuff, and just accentuate the stuff that is there already. And maybe some more sort of like wildflower meadow type area. I know when we were there, we talked to a lady who lived around the corner, and she had been planting seeds around a tree that's sort of to the left of the dead oak tree. So there's definitely potential for some wildflower meadow type area near the main gate, which is sort of south facing and does get some sun. So there's a lot of opportunity for that there. And then we can bring in a management plan to help maintain the site, look after it, you know, in whatever way it is chosen. But there's certainly a lot of opportunities for the community to get involved, you know, with planting trees, helping sort of wildflower meadow, helping maintain things into the future. So yeah, I was really impressed actually with Oakwood Grove. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I think a lot of.
I think if I may interject there as well, Nick, the one thing that we kept referring to it as between us, wasn't it? It was that it had the opportunity to be a very like mini nature reserve within Alderbury, because it, you know, to have two really mature oaks like that, even if one is deceased, you know, the potential to put understory planting, some wildflower meadow strips, or at least encourage wildflower species and things. Yeah, it really kind of presented a really nice natural area. So yeah, we kept referring to this mini nature reserve almost. Yeah,
and I yeah, agree with that, definitely. Yeah, I felt like, yeah, this is a really great site, and that's why I felt like it needed its own sort of specific site assessment. But then we got to the next site, and that just blew me away entirely. So yeah, I'll move on to the canal. Now, I was just like massively impressed with this area. So I think it's one of those sort of hidden historical assets. I don't know.
Nick, I'm going to interject again. This is just making me giggle. I've just realised you were saying how beautiful it is and how really like enthralled we were, and we were. Steve was also really enthralled, Steve Milton, and we can actually see his head because he got so excited looking in the central picture.
Yeah, well,
down into the lake.
You can stop interjecting because I was going to bring that up later on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's because we were looking at whirligig beetles. I remember.
Yeah. So yeah, when I put this together, I didn't actually realise Steve's head was in there until.
I think that is far too grey to be me. It's somebody else.
Yeah, it's not you, Steve. It's someone else.
I wasn't sure whose head it was. All I knew it was a head.
Anyway, sorry, I've gone massively off topic.
Yeah,
sorry,
Nick. Sorry. Yeah. I did know about it, and I saw it this afternoon, and I was going to bring it up. So yeah, that's done now. So okay. Anyway, so the canal. In terms of like what Alderbury has there, I think it's an absolute gem. I think, you know, if you talk about natural capital, which is like the stock of like natural assets that an area has, so like the soil, the air, the water, the living things that are in it. That area there with the canal has just got that in abundance. You know, the woodland was amazing. You know, the water. You know, it was just such a great site, and I'm sure it's absolutely stuffed with wildlife if we were to do further surveys and check it out. And I think there's a lot of potential there for a sort of more of like a sort of nature reserve type feel, with a pathway around from one side to the other, which is already being used by people to take the kids to school and stuff like that, apparently. So I don't think you can put a price on, you know, what that site can do in terms of, you know, people's well-being, getting people outside into, you know, the natural habitat, into the woods, you know, by the water. It's got so much potential for, you know, taking school kids out there and you know, educating them about what we've got living around us, all that type of stuff. It could so easily be done there. And there's a lot of opportunity again for the community to get involved in that site. I think the only real issue I see there is the fact that it is owned by the Longford estate. So to actually carry out some of this stuff that we're talking about, it would take some sort of project which would end up sort of leasing that land perhaps from the Longford estate, so some of these things could be done. I think there's potential to do that. We talked about it with Steve quite a bit, and the site is already being used in various ways by people, albeit, you know, not particularly, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of, yeah, that people are using it when actually it does belong to the Longford estate and it's not public access. But I think that there's definitely potential to work on that. And I think, to me, that the canal is the gem, is, you know, it's the jewel in the crown of like Alderbury, if you ask me. I think there's so much potential there, and I think when we start digging into that and doing some surveys and seeing what's actually there, we're going to find that it's a really biodiverse area. So there we go. Right, okay, on to the next section. That's Chelsie again now.
Yeah, great. So the other kind of thing that we discussed really was there was several areas across Alderbury really, which are still again massively open to discussion. But essentially, you know, when housing estates have been built historically, you end up with a green space in the middle or somewhere around near the housing, which tends to not really have much of a purpose. And sometimes housing estates have several of them, sometimes it's just one kind of central piece. An area that we were particularly using as an example really was it Spider Island, which has several green patches in amongst the housing, a few of them off to the side that just don't really kind of get any use and don't kind of seem to serve much benefit again for people or wildlife. So in general terms, what we were kind of thinking was tree planting or shrub planting, but we kind of don't want So it's a bit of a different kind of approach that we're wanting to get across. So rather than, if you think of standard tree planting that seems to be happening everywhere at the moment, it's very much, you know, just long straight rows, plantation style planting every 2 to 4 meters, lots of little saplings, and that's kind of the gist. And they fill a space, you know, they absolutely fill whatever green space is available, fill it with trees and wait. This is a slightly different approach which we've started supporting, particularly with Chippenham Town Council actually, and it started spreading into the UK from Japan. And it's just a different approach to tree planting, but we feel it's much better within urban settings. Because it's much more kind of like densely and neatly packed, it's much more easily managed, it's not as imposing for like adjacent kind of residents, and also in terms of biodiversity they're actually far more quickly established. So a tiny forest is literally a dense, fast-growing native woodland. The difference in the planting is that you choose an area. I mean, the suggested area is roughly the size of a tennis court, but actually, you know, that can be completely altered to whatever size is available and whatever size is suitable. But yeah, trees are basically densely planted within that plot. And it means that literally within the first 3 years, the growth rate's much more accelerated, and the biodiversity that it supports is much more accelerated. So yeah, it says here, you know, capable of attracting over 500 animal and plant species within the first 3 years. And that's purely because you use a really good mixture of native shrubs, native tree species. And again, these can be totally tailored. You know, we don't have to be suddenly talking about planting, you know, oaks right outside of a housing estate. We can be developing these so that, you know, our largest trees may only grow to, you know, a smaller, less significant height. Again, it's also tailored in the sense that if we don't want to plant, you know, all 60 centimetre tiny little saplings, like in the first photo on the left there, we could actually bring in a mixture with, you know, a percentage of smaller trees and shrubs, or younger, should I say, trees and shrubs, and a couple of like feature trees to start it off. So there's a lot of opportunity there to really kind of tailor it to the locations that they go in. Similarly, damp ground isn't a problem. We can choose species like alder, or some small willows. But they're brilliant. So you can see this timeline that I've put in is from a tiny forest that was put in up in Witney. The community really got involved. It was a select area that was then fenced off, benches put in, a sign, and you can see there, so it was planting day in March 2020, the first growing season, so a year later, and then a monitoring event in the September of the following year. So, and you can see already the growth's really significant. They're really low maintenance, much more easy to manage, and yeah, genuinely a really good kind of biodiversity hotspot, really. Nick. Thank you. So again, just to help with this idea of what a tiny forest is, or how it looks a bit different. So yeah, top left photo is a really nice one. I mean, they don't have to be fenced in, there's no reason why they do, but in urban areas a lot of people like to turn them into kind of like their own little kind of like hub, if you like, and they put some benches in the middle in a little open glade and a sign, so it's quite a nice little area to spend time in. And that bottom photo there, the forest one, Native Wild Forever, that's another one where it just shows how much quicker they develop and how much more kind of bushy they tend to become because they're tightly planted. So you can see there they put a nice circular copse of woodland and then put a lovely walkway path through the middle. So rather than a barren piece of land, you've got loads of native trees and shrubs that will hold berries, that will hold flowers, blossoms, and will also provide shelter, habitat, food for wildlife, insects, bird species, nesting opportunity, but also hopefully, you know, to local residents, it's somewhere where you can either have a lovely, you know, meandering walkway through these areas or a little bench seating area in the middle. So hopefully that, yeah, it's a really positive thing. And just that top picture again just shows the reason why they do work so well is because you can instantly establish the different layers of a woodland that's really needed. So I don't know if anybody's noticed any planting that's been going on recently. Tree planting's great, don't get me wrong. We need, you know, we do need more trees, we need more habitat. But when you end up doing plantation planting like that, you plant all the same age saplings all in rows. And actually to finally get to a woodland stage where you have lots of different canopy heights and things takes quite a lot of work, quite a number of years. Whereas with these tiny forests, you can kind of start that much quicker. I mean, you go back to that top left photo again, you can see that there's literally herb layers right from the ground all the way up through the canopies, right through to kind of what you can see are more of the emergent tree canopies, you know, the actual top layers. So much more beneficial for wildlife. Personally, I think they look much more attractive. They tend to attract much less antisocial behaviour because you haven't got the like the floor room underneath the tree canopies, if you see what I'm saying. So it's literally the areas you leave unplanted are the areas that are used by people in between the trees. So yeah, really a kind of bit of a new idea, if you like, to get your head around, but the basis of it is tree planting. But I just want to kind of reiterate that it's all very much done on the basis of what works well in which place. So yeah, we did have a look at Spider Island. Seemed to have a plot of land that lent itself particularly well to this kind of idea, if you like, where a footpath came up into the housing estate, but actually had a piece of land just alongside it that was to the edge of the housing and doesn't seem to be really used by anything really at all. But any kind of site across Alderbury that, you know, this would be supported on in these small kind of scales, I think could be really beneficial. So yeah, just another idea really for consideration.
I really like that one in the top left. I think it looks great, and to me it's like a little oasis in the middle of a town or whatever. If a person was inside there, you know, it would just be lovely.
I just think if you picture like these little green patches of grass that you get in housing estates, you know, when they're central in front of the housing, then fair enough, you probably don't, you know, you might not want to plant on those because that's your kind of like viewpoint out of your house and stuff. But there's certain plots of land that are just kind of like off to the side and left, and they're a bit barren and not really used. And I think, yeah, if you know, personally, if I was to kind of like walk out of my house and see a little kind of woodland copse like that and have a little bench seating area in the middle and a footpath going through it, yeah, much more interesting, much more inviting, and you know, benefits for wildlife are outnumbered really. So
yeah, definitely. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, so community involvement. I think there's, while we're sort of in the process of you know, doing our assessments, working out what's what and how we're going to sort of take this forward, there's all sorts of things that, you know, the people of Alderbury can do to help wildlife be a bit more environmentally friendly. You know, you're going to know all the sorts of stuff. You know, you can, you know, plant more pollinators and recycle more, don't use pesticides, that type of thing. But the thing I want to talk to you about tonight is recording your wildlife sightings. Now, for me, I think that's really important, because unless we know what is already there, we don't know what we need to do to be able to help those things. A good example is while we were walking through the wreck, Chelsie found some evidence that the site had been used by hedgehogs. Now, you know, if everybody were to record their sightings of hedgehogs, then we'd have a really good picture of what was there and what we needed to do to help. So there's some really easy ways that you can record your sightings, and one of those is a website called iRecord. So it's a really easy site to use. Doesn't take long to get the hang of, really. You need to register for it, but then once you're registered, you can record pretty much anything that you see, be it plants, mammals, birds, whatever. It can all be recorded on there. And the beauty of it is that all the data that gets put onto iRecord then goes to the Biological Records Centre. So each county has a Biological Records Centre. Obviously the one in Wiltshire is the Wiltshire and Swindon Biological Records Centre, but the data at these record centres is what conservation organisations use to underpin all the work that we do. So all the records that anybody puts in are really valuable. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is the more people in Alderbury who can make records, or record their wildlife sightings using iRecord or whatever other means that you want. You can go onto the Wiltshire Swindon Biological Record Centre and put your records on there if you wanted to. But yeah, whatever means you use, I think it's really important for the community to get involved, record those sightings. We can then use that data to inform what we're doing, and hopefully then go on to help wildlife in the best way possible. So there's a couple of ways that you can get onto iRecord. It's really easy. Just go on Google and Google iRecord and it comes up straight away. There's also an app, or I've noticed a spelling mistake there, that find it in the App Store. So it's not, obviously not Tor, find it in the App Store. So yeah, if you've got an Apple phone, you can get the app. I'm sure that there's one for Android as well. Or you can go to that website that I've put at the bottom, www.brc.ac.uk/iRecord. So yeah, please get involved, get on there, record some sightings. We'll be able to access all those records by going onto iRecord ourselves. So yeah, it's really important. Hopefully, yeah, we can start building up a picture of what is already present in Alderbury.